Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to help me support Dr. Jasser in his candidacy. Thank you for coming. It's really important that you're here. My name's Austin Potenza. I'm your host this evening, and it's really a pleasure and an honor to be helping in this very worthy cause. Dr. Jasser asked me to be brief. I'm a lawyer, so he's already posed the challenge for me, but he asked me to very briefly tell you why I think it's important, why this election is important. Dr. Jasser isn't. I'm not in Dr. Jasser's district, but that makes no difference to me. Briefly, I had the same story that all of you have. We all have a version of the same story. My grandparents came here from Italy. Some were very, very poor. Some came from wealthy families. They came here because they believed in a dream and a promise, the promise that is this wonderful nation. My wife's family came from Germany and from England, and they worked in the mines, and they homesteaded in the Midwest, and they believed in the same dream. And that dream and the promise was that if you work, sacrifice, that this was the place that you could make something of yourself, for yourself, because what it promised you was self-sufficiency. What it promised you was opportunity. What it promised you was a chance to improve yourself and have something of your own, which none of them felt they had when they came here. And they did, and they succeeded, and they suffered, and they succeeded. And my parents and I and my wife, our families, built on that success. That promise comes with a set of values that we all at one point had to agree to, whether they were natural to us or otherwise. And that was personal responsibility, hard work, self-reliance. That's what our country is all about. I'm 70 years old. I've lived through the Vietnam era, the Civil Rights era, a few recessions. I've lived through lots of times where it felt like our country was sort of trying to pull itself in different directions, pull itself apart. What felt different about all of those and what's happening now for me is that I never felt that we lost sight of those values back then. We were always trying to be better. The people who were protesting when I was in high school, whatever side of that you were on, it was about who are we? Can we be better? The civil rights movement was who are we? Can we be better? This feels different. What's happening now in the country feels different. I was never particularly politically active one way or the other, but I care about what's happening now because it seems to me that there is a growing group of people who have forgotten those very values upon which our country was based. At a time when we're celebrating our 250th birthday, I hear people who seem to have lost touch with those fundamental values. Self-reliance, take care of yourself, sacrifice, help others. And the promise they think is different too. The government will take care of everything. You don't have to. That scares me. That's for the first time in my life paying attention to politics. It scares me a little bit. So that's why I think this is important. I think a lot of those people have worked their way into a very, very powerful, important party in this country, the Democratic Party. And I fear what's happening in that party. And I believe now more than ever it's important that we elect people who don't forget those values and who can fight for what I believe America is and has always stood for. Dr. Jasser hasn't forgotten those values. Dr. Jasser is courageous. His story is like mine. I mean, like so many of ours. Dr. Jasser believes in the same values that have made the country great. His opponent, I don't believe, does. And I believe he's vulnerable now. And I think it's really, really important for us to support everyone to represent us who continues to cherish those same values, maybe now more than ever. So with that, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm supporting Dr. Jasser's candidacy, besides the fact that I think he's a great guy. And that's why I'm writing a check tonight, too. So anyway, with that, I wanted to just say a couple of brief things about this event. First of all, housekeeping. We have parking tickets for everybody, so don't forget them on the way out. And you put the one you got on the way in the machine, then you put the one we give you in the machine. I wouldn't have to explain that, except it's a strange way of doing it. This is not the typical fundraising event. This is a part of a series of lectures that Dr. Jasser is participating in. And if you've ever heard any of Dr. Jasser's speeches, you'll be excited as I am to hear him talk today. And if you haven't, check him out online. He's very, very brave and very intelligent. So this is more about the theme of America 250, what America means to us. I've said enough. I think I went beyond 5 minutes. Dr. Jasser, it's really an honor to welcome you to the podium. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Austin, and James T., and my wife Gada, and Zaina, and the family, and all of you for making it here through the monsoons. And appreciate you joining us in this, what I feel is a special event. You know, before I get into my speech, I want to tell you that politics, if you will, has gone in various different directions, especially in the last few years. We seem to be separating as a country, and many of my team got together and said, how do we change up the typical pattern of what happens during fundraisers or during events? And we said, you know what, in America's 250, what are candidates doing today? And so what we bring you today is the launch of, as Austin said, this inaugural speech in a series of 5 speeches I'm giving in our community under the general title, What is America to Me? The America at 250 Conversations. And I'm honored that James T. Harris has joined us, and I'll introduce him when I'm done, to have a conversation with me about many of the issues that I'm going to raise here in this initial 15 minutes or so of remarks. So as I look forward to this conversation, the question is about the importance of America and how do we preserve it. Should I have the honor of representing as Arizona's 4th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives? The title, the theme of these speeches, What is America to Me, comes from a song sung by Frank Sinatra from a short film made in 1946. The film was aired throughout the country, and it was about a rough and tumble gang of boys beating up one another, beating up another boy especially because he was Jewish. Sinatra steps in, gives the gang a lecture on equality and what all these boys' parents had just defeated in World War II. The ideologies of racial superiority and inferiority. And then he broke into a song about the beauty of America and how we don't do that here. I was inspired by this theme, as was my campaign inspired by this theme, and my whole life is inspired by this theme. Because as tonight's topic, Only in America, the American Dream Realized, imparts, I think we need to defend that notion again. We need to defend this notion again, ironically, as this year commemorates the 250th birthday, because so many did not write down the dream, because so many have forgotten the dream, because so many did not only write it down, but so many want to turn the dream into a nightmare. In a way, it's a shame these speeches even have to be given, because once upon a time, not long ago, they wouldn't have. The American cause, the American dream, infused or suffused our culture. Everywhere from what we learned in school to what our parents told us about this country at the dinner table, to what we saw on television and the movies, to everyday example of what we saw all around us, from work to leisure. President Reagan, to this in his farewell address from the White House in 1986, he spoke to this. In that televised national address, his message to America as president, you might say, he said this, and it's just remarkable how much it mirrors what's happening today. He said, "Are we doing good enough job teaching our children what America is and what she represents in the long history of the world? Those of us who are over 35 or so years of age grew up in a different America. We were taught very directly what it means to be American. And we absorbed almost in the air a love of country and an appreciation of its institutions. If you didn't get these things from your family, you got it from the neighborhood, from the father down the street who fought in Korea, or from the family who lost someone in Anzio. Or you could get a sense of patriotism from school. And if that failed, you could get a sense of patriotism from the popular culture. The movie celebrated democratic values and implicitly reinforced the idea that America was special. It was exceptional. TV was like that too through the mid-60s. Reagan went on. He said, but now we're about to enter the 90s, and some things have changed. Younger parents aren't sure that an unambivalent appreciation of America is the right thing to teach modern children. And as for those who create the popular culture, well-grounded patriotism is no longer the style. Our spirit is back, but we haven't reinstitutionalized it. We've got to do a better job of getting across that America is freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise. And freedom is special and rare. It's fragile. It needs protection. Now, if I may scold our movement, the conservative movement, for just a moment. So many of us know Ronald Reagan's more famous quotes, which is said over and over again in our conservative meetings, but just various ways. He said, freedom is fragile. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on to them to do the same. So I scold my movement, the conservative movement, because we delight in quoting that, but I'm not sure we took it or take it as seriously as we should, as seriously as Ronald Reagan thought we should. It's something easy to say and convince ourselves of, but do we take it seriously? One generation away. I point to the wages all around us, the result all around us about what now is infusing our politics and our culture. Is it in fact the unambivalent appreciation of our country Ronald Reagan spoke to? Or rather, is it more a scorning and a series of apologies and a culture of grievance about this country? Do young people flock to our defense? Or do they flock to the conspiratorial blame that America firsts, Pied Pipers of Podcastistan, along with the noxious and dangerous ideologies promoted by the red-green axis, the socialist critique of America, combined with the radical Islamist critique of Western culture? And now we're seeing candidates on both sides of that. And by Western culture, I mean the best that has been handed down to us from the ancient Greeks and others that led to wisdom and the courage of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, and so many others of our founding generation. Handed to us to create and bequeath us a country based on freedom, equality, inquiry, pluralism, self-government, consent, and the rights spelled out in our Declaration of Independence and carried through and into our Constitution. I come to all this with an especial prejudice, and if I'm being frankly in anger. For once upon a time, speeches like this would not have to be given. But my family and our experience in America perhaps gives me a little better insight into those who are just now seeing this socialist, Marxist, Islamist rise in America with shock, as if it came out of nowhere. I'm shocked. My family went through this. And the reason I'm running for Congress, the reason I do almost everything I do outside my day job, is because I've seen one country with great promise fall. And I simply cannot abide seeing the greatest country on earth that has achieved that promise fall too. My family fled Syria in the late 60s. And because just as Syria was on the cusp of achieving greater and greater democracy after World War II, a thuggish, ideological, fueled coup inspired by the socialist fascism of Baathism, inspired the socialist ideologies we had defeated in Europe and in World War II. It fueled ethnic and religious intolerance and arrogance. It took down that experiment in Syria and turned it into the charnel house of skeletons that we all know it to be now. There are many lessons there, and your immigrants are here to remind you that it's one generation away, including that Syria's Ba'athist revolution did not start with a majority. It started with a very potent minority. My family lost one country, and as long as God puts oxygen in my lungs, I've sworn upon the altar of God, if I may purchase or paraphrase, if I will, Thomas Jefferson, I'll do everything in my ability to keep us from losing another. That other being this place, this realm, this land that I love, whose 250th birthday we celebrate this year. This America. This country, America, that gave my family and so many others so much. It gave my family a place of refuge where, with a different kind of name, like Mohammed Zuhdi Jasser, my father could practice medicine and raise a family and run a small business in as American name place as Appleton or Neenah, Wisconsin. And where his son, with a name like Zuhdi, could play and grow up following the Green Bay Packers, watching them on Sunday, owning a little piece of the Packers, and collecting and trading football cards with his friends. For a moment, I thought I was going to sell my cards for the campaign, but I didn't do that, actually. I still have them. Where I could go on to college and medical school and join the U.S. Navy with a scholarship and be as integrated into this society as anyone else whose family might have been named Jones, Smith, or Sinatra, or Potenza. Of course, we didn't come here to this point in our history without a lot of problems and prejudice. And it took us years and years of hard work to iron out and make real what Martin Luther King Jr., as Frederick Douglass before him, had to continually remind us of: our founding promise. That whatever prejudices and deviations from ethnic and religious and racial pluralism affected us here, they were departures from, not instructions to, our very founding, our very birth. Of course, we were not perfect, and we are not perfect today. I'm reminded of what former U.S. Ambassador to the UN and United States Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan once said. He said, "Am I embarrassed to speak for a less than perfect democracy? Not one bit. Find me a better one. Do I suppose there are societies which are free of sin? No, I don't. Do I think ours is on balance, incomparably the most hopeful set of human relations the world has? Yes, I do. But that is not where we are today. We are in a place where several representatives in Congress today, fueled by the socialist Islamist narrative and critique of our country, are about to be joined by several more. We are in a place where majorities of Democrats tell pollsters they would vote for a socialist here, and where our nation's youth favor socialism over capitalism. And on our college campuses and throughout social media, our youth tell us that Osama bin Laden had worthy and worthwhile critiques of the United States of America. We need people who can prosecute the case against this nonsense. We are in a political and cultural place today where our schools teach only about the sins of America and none of her achievements. Where members of the House of Representatives like Ilhan Omar can speak in the front of the U.S. House of Representatives and tell us we live in a tyranny worse than the country of Somalia, where she escaped from. I served in the U.S. Navy in Operation Restore Hope off the shores of Mogadishu, and I can tell you, I'm blessed to be living in the United States of America. Such purchase, it's not unusual, first of all, that demagogues will lie for political power. That's not new. It's unusual that such lies are finding such purchase. among our youth in America. Such purchase that the most powerful political organization in this country today, this year on our 250th anniversary, is a movement, the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, that is set upon destroying everything we did 250 years ago and took 250 years to perfect. And my opponent hasn't said one word against that movement within his party. Does anyone truly think that a Zuhdi Jasser, much less a James T. Harris, or any one of you, could go to any of the countries that the DSA and our nation's youth march for, and our colleges and university professors valorize, and live freely and equally among those populations and under those governments? Here's the quick and easy test. Do those countries have immigration problems or emigration problems? Does the Marxist Islamist left here in America ever ask why we have an immigration problem? Well, I know the answer to that question. And deep down, so do many of you. And it's because our founders gave us a precious gift here, a country dedicated to human equality, as much as the ability to realize that God-given talents toward human achievement and betterment, because we won the lottery of finding a place called America. Because God gave us humanity the lottery ticket to etch out a place called America. A place where, as Dorothy sings in The Wizard of Oz, the dreams that we dare to dream really can come true. It's all at risk today. Sadly, it's all at risk because just as freedom can never be taken for granted, evil never dies. And that's why I'm running for Congress and giving this series of speeches. Because I, for one, actually know that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. My parents, my grandparents escaped that. And if, God forbid, it ever is extinguished here, I want to be able to tell my grandchildren not only what it was once like living in a place called America where men and women were free, but that I did everything in my God-given power to keep it. I thank you, and I look forward to my conversation with James T. and engaging all of you and your families and your neighbors and your cities and communities about the beauty of America and what the American dream is. God bless. So now it's my honor to introduce my colleague, my friend, James T. Harris, who needs no introduction to all of you, and give him a chance to make a few comments and then lead our first America 250 conversation. Here in the Valley in Arizona, James T. is a force of nature, an amazing spirit, an influence, a good-naturedness that, as an American conservative talk radio host and commentator and motivational speaker, he hosts the Conservative Circus on KFYI weekday mornings and on 790 KNST in Tucson. His thought leadership in the community is an unfiltered commentary on politics, culture, civics, with some humor from a conservative perspective. We travel in the same streams on Newsmax, Fox, iHeartMedia, both hailing from Wisconsin, both cheeseheads, and specifically from Milwaukee, and also former UW Milwaukee Panthers. He's commonly referred to as the ringleader of the conservative circus, and I'm proud to be one of those folks who's been in his ring. So I'm honored to call him a friend, and James T., welcome. Thank you for being here.
I can honestly say that I don't do a lot of endorsements when it comes to people who run for Congress, people who run for the Senate. It's a big club. It's a big club. And at the end of the day, I think what you need to understand is you ain't in it. You're not. It's a big club, a powerful club. You're not in it. You work hard to get people there, and then they absolutely forget who you are. They forget the things that you did to help get them there. If you go to Washington, D.C., you might get a tour. But when it comes to the issues that are happening here at home that they need to know about, it's a big club. And there's a lot of people that are competing, a lot of more powerful people that are competing for